But we also, what's really cool about these old photographs is that these historical photographs, is that we consult on television shows, like television series and films, from the Nick and Jacob's Ladder and the others, and I mean all of these incredible. I could
Right.
go on it. The Gilded Age,
Right, right. That's
all
just
of
what it's
these
about.
television series. And what's really cool about it is that they use the old photographs to recreate time.
Hello, this is Sonya Hollins with Girls Talk Books. Today we have a fascinating interview with Liz Burns, the author of Picturing Freedom, African Americans in Their Cars. And you can see we're in this beautiful Gilmore Car Museum here in Hickory Corners, Michigan, because this is the site of our opening reception for our exhibition. And before we get started, I want to give you a little bit of background about the exhibition, Driving into History, Black Women, Cars, and Courage. So the entire exhibition started basically as an idea. I was online looking for something and I saw this amazing book called Picturing Freedom. And it had a beautiful African-American guy on the front by his car and he was smiling and it made me smile. And I was like, I wonder what this book is about. So the more I started reading and looking into it, I was like, how cool would that be to take the images of the women and girls in this book and totally recreate them? And not just recreate the images, but the stories of what was going on in that era during those times for those women. And it would be an opportunity for the Merced Explorers to not only learn about history, but have a cool, fun opportunity to take photographs by these beautiful cars at one of the world's largest car museums. So today, we're gonna talk to Liz Burns about her inspiration behind her book and then our partnerships together. So let's meet Liz. Hi, Liz, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Sonia.
Welcome to Girls Talk Books.
Thank you.
I have had a great time with you since you've been here. You've been not only here for your book, but also helping me get ready for this beautiful exhibition that we're unveiling today at the Gilmore Car Museum. So thank you for all your
Thank you
help.
for all of this.
So let's get started. I know we're having fun because we're in the car museum and we have our cool little girly, convertible outfits on, but we can take them off and we can just get serious here. All right. That was fun. All right. So let's get going. So tell us a little bit about the Burns Archive. So not only do you have this book, you and your father have dozens of books about history, about medicine. So give us a little history about the
Photographic
Burns.
history. We're an archive
Mhm.
of over 1 million historic photographs.
Wow.
I always say from the birth of photography, which was in 1839,
Mm.
through the atomic age, because it's a good visual. You can sort of imagine the 1950s and all of that.
Mhm.
So the archive consists of historical images.
Okay.
Our major collections of holdings are in medicine, memorial, crime,
Mm.
Judaica, and African American.
Okay.
That's where our major collections are. We do have lots of other things such as travel and ethnology and other things to
Right.
fill in the history.
And it's interesting because you say you have photo collections. Tell us how that got started, because that's a cool job and you don't think about people just collecting photographs. Like you're collecting them, but what are you going to do with them? So how did that all come about? Your dad started the...
They're not art photographs, right?
Okay.
Like you go to an art museum and you may see a gorgeous photo by Gordon Parks, which may perhaps be a documentary photograph. But or also considered an art photograph. What my dad collected, he started collecting in the early 1970s when someone showed him a daguerreotype, which is the first form of photography. It's a photograph that looks like it's on a mirror.
Mm.
They're one of a kind. That's called a direct positive. So when it's photographed, it's right there.
Oh.
And so he saw one of these and it was a medical photograph and it was misidentified with a little piece of paper. And all of a sudden he saw, right, he understood something, that there's truth in early photography, that there's history, because he's a historian, also a doctor,
Right.
but collectors collect. And so he sold off his other collections and started massively collecting historical photography.
Wow.
Starting with medicine and branching into other things. And he started collecting African American photographs because he grew up in Brownsville, Brooklyn. And he was born in 1938. And Brownsville, Brooklyn was Jewish and Black. And so that's how he grew up. And when he started collecting photographs, he saw all this derogatory imagery of African Americans and Jewish people and all of that. But he realized that he's like, dude, that's not true. I mean, it's true. It's just not true. So he started collecting African American middle class photographs of just people, because people are people.
Right.
So we have this really large collection of the African American experience, not just these wonderful photos, which we'll get to,
Right.
but the history from free people and enslavement all the way through civil rights. So we have this wonderful collection.
And I love it because the photographs that we have in the book, they aren't like the typical photos you'll see of slavery and hard times, and they're like the joy of African Americans. And I think that's what drew me to the book. Sometimes, I mean, our history is heavy enough than to have a whole book full of photographs that just drudge up those hard times.
We had been, for years, we'd never done a book. We've done a lot of other projects with the African American collection, exhibitions and documentaries and such. But putting a book is a tangible item, right? And we never quite knew what book to make, how to tap into this collection in such a way. And the pandemic hit, and those were tough times for everybody. And when you heard about African Americans in their cars, the visuals, I mean, I still get chills thinking about it. Visuals that would pop into your head at the time were just terrible. And I knew, when you have a collection and you have a lot of things, you see patterns when you look through photographs. And we realized what we had were a lot of photographs of people posing by their cars. These gorgeous, joyful, beautiful, incredible photographs that have all of this hope and all this pride and all this joy. And the photographs speak for themselves, right? So the book is all of this Black joy. I mean, the text tells the history, and there are none of those images in the book on purpose, because people are interesting, and they will always, you see one image, they'll take away that and ignore the other 500. So this book is just meant to add to the visual narrative, as we like to say in the photography world, right? Or the history world. It adds to the visual narrative. So when you think of African Americans in their cars, you can picture the beautiful images and these gorgeous young women of the Mers Tate explorers also doing it, right? I mean, we haven't gotten to that yet, but that adds to it as well. We're adding to this visual narrative, which is a really important thing since we're such a visual society.
And you're right. And the photographs that we start in the early 1900s, after slavery, and during the time when African Americans were really starting to get on their own, starting their own businesses, trying to branch off and find their own way outside the plantation life or the life that had been there. And what was most interesting is that freedom.
They offer
Cars
freedom.
bring
That's why it's
freedom.
called picturing freedom, right? We like a little,
Right.
that's what it is. We say that this book offered, that the automobile offered so many freedoms. That's the thing. It offered the freedom to migrate, which is always a big one, right? The freedom to get a different kind of a job, right? Because all of a sudden you're not tied to Jim Crow transportation anymore. And you can also go somewhere else. You're not even just where transportation is. You can make your own hours. There's so much done. Like you could get, there's a huge list of things you can do.
Right.
Once you have a car, you can visit your family and friends.
Exactly.
I mean, you can do so much.
And it was important because people who had cars, they had that freedom of mobility. They had the opportunities to do things that other people were. Maybe we had to get on this truck together and go to the plantation and pick cotton. We didn't have a way to get around.
You
to
can
other
travel.
jobs.
You can do all kinds of things. I mean,
Yeah. And one of the interesting photographs that I've seen of women, because you're talking about the women and girls, we always have this iconic photograph of Madam C.J. Walker in her car.
absolutely.
That is a beautiful photo. And if anything, it talks about the independence of a Black woman, the courage of the Black woman, her having her own business, her having this car when she's behind the wheel. It's just amazing that the stories behind cars and what they mean to people.
I mean, one of the things is you couldn't really own a house, right? You've got redlining, you've got all this terrible stuff going on. You could own a car.
Exactly.
As I point to these incredible automobiles all around us here at the
Right.
but you could own a car.
And not only that, the freedom of the car was one thing, but then there were other issues such as, being on the road as a Black person and being stopped by the police. Whose car are you in? Where did you get this car? Oh, your tail light is out. Like there were other issues that came along with the freedom of African Americans having a car that some people just were not happy with at all.
Absolutely. As I said, we write about it, but it's not in those pictures. In the photographs show this, have a whole different,
joy.
right? They
Right,
show the joy.
And,
Yes.
and it's interesting because when we were teaching the explorers about history through these photographs, and we saw the joy, and the girls selected the photo that most resonated with them, they saw the joy. That was the first thing that they saw. But then once we got into the history of that time period, what were Black women doing during that time period? What were they getting paid? Who were some of the Black women standing out throughout history? They're learning about Claudette Colvin, who was a young girl who, before Rosa Parks, she sat on the bus and was arrested, in the South. So there are other women that these girls were learning about that they don't hear about all the time in school. And in addition to that, learning about the sundown towns and the green book of how you had to have this book as African Americans to travel safely, because it tells you what restaurants you can eat at, where places you can stay at, what towns to not be in after a certain time. In some towns when they ring that bell, you better be out before they stop ringing that bell. And even in Michigan, there were sundown towns.
There were sundown towns all across America. There's a little in the book. It talks about how Route 66, right? Nat King Cole,
Right.
that great song about Route 66, and I'm sorry, I forget the exact number, but he couldn't stop at most of the towns along Route 66.
Right. So freedom for some people didn't mean necessarily freedom for African Americans.
No, it absolutely didn't.
And I think that's why I was drawn to this book, because I think our young people sometimes they feel like things have always been this way for them, or they'll hear about slavery and then everything will skip into the civil rights movement, or they'll hear about
a lot of stuff happened between here and there,
or they'll hear about Rosa Parks and maybe Madam C.J. Walker, Sojourner Truth, and Harriet Tubman. But what about Katherine Johnson, a scientist for NASA? What about all these amazing women? Lulu Childers, who was from Howell, Michigan, who started the music department at Howard University and helped Marian Anderson, the opera singer, perform that beautiful concert at the Lincoln Memorial. So there are all these women we're learning about in between.
I love it.
That
this makes me so happy.
Right.
I'm so
And they say pictures say 1,000 words, but the pictures and the stories and the history and the eras, these girls were learning about all of that.
Which is an incredible thing, right? Like when we put this book out into the world, you never know what you're going to get back.
Right.
And to have put this out there and then have it transcend and transform across generations, right? All of a sudden, these young women are learning their own history, right, from these books and are inspired by it.
Exactly.
And to me, it's everything. This exhibit means more to me than most things I've ever done in my life. You did this.
Well, we did this together, because when I emailed you, I email people all the time. I'll email somebody in a minute. I'll email, and just try to get a connection. But I emailed you and you literally emailed me back like not even 24 hours later saying, let's do it.
It would have been sooner, but I was on my way out when I saw the email.
Right.
I was like, this is incredible.
Right. And I think that's why this story is so powerful, because not only were you in, once you were in, I came to Nick at the Gilmore Car Museum, who's the director. I was like, Nick, we have this book. The author is in. Can we do a photo shoot here of these girls in these cars in period clothing? And he was like, let's do it. It wasn't even a second thought.
Well, because I think that this idea of this resonates with everyone, when how important it is, right? Because if we forget our history, if we don't learn our history, and so of course, Nick, and this is a historical car museum, right? It's wonderful that he did it. I couldn't be any more thrilled, right? That he there's even pictures of girls standing on the cars.
Exactly.
Right? They're in socks, I assume.
Right.
But,
Right. They're not jumping on them. They're carefully acting like they're dancing, but their feet are really not moving. But yes.
But yes, it's a wonderful thing, right? Because these things matter, right? History matters.
Right. And not only that, they have a Green Book exhibition here, which talks about that. They interview some of the people. So, for Nick, I think it was important not only to have these girls in this museum, but he took them around for a day and told the history of the cars and the history of the horns and like all these things that have to do with cars, and really even how to pump gas. Like they have a little, old-fashioned gas station, and it showed them like how you pump gas back in the day and the difference between full service stations.
We actually talk about that in the book again. One of the things that the car also offered was new kinds of employment. Just the automobile industry itself offered employment that didn't exist before, that hadn't already been. It was an open field, right? It wasn't already taken over by white or run by white people, for lack of a better way to put it.
Thanks for joining us on Girls Talk Books, where we celebrate the power of representation in publishing and uncover the stories that matter most. We hope you're leaving inspired, empowered, and ready to take the next step on your own publishing journey. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who needs a little extra encouragement on their storytelling journey. I'm Sonya Hollins. Until next time, keep writing, keep dreaming, and remember, your story matters. See you next time on Girls Talk Books.